episode number 78 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Dana Childs. Dana is an intuitive energy healer and teacher. She delivers grounded spirituality with heart, humor, and unabashed truth through her talks and healing sessions delivered to the executive, individual, or couple. She leads workshops, online courses, and retreats to help others learn to access their true selves and open their intuitive gifts. When not helping others on their search for personal and professional fulfillment, she can be found writing articles, working on a book, or playing and hiking with her dog Sufi in North Carolina. So welcome to the podcast, Dana.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm very intrigued with what you do, and I wanted to get a background story of how you realize that you have this gift of energy healing and intuition.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, I started out teaching middle schoolers, and I taught middle school and college.
I love teachers.
Yeah, right. And I think everybody's in appreciation of them right now too, given the life that schools have been called out. So yeah, I started out as a teacher, and I did that for 7 years, and I did middle school, a little bit of high school, and some university, and then I migrated into banking. So I was actually a financial banker for 5 years and worked for a huge bank. Yeah, a huge bank. And I got really into yoga to help deal with that stress. I was very much in a man's world, and it was a really interesting time. And so I just thought I need something to help me better cope with the stress. And I mean, quite literally being told like, "Oh, I see you got this job because you're cute." I mean, it was things like that. Yeah. And I'd be like, "Yes, I'm also smart. Shall we start this meeting?"
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
I thought, I was like, okay, if I'm on my yoga mat, then I'm in a place where I felt more sort of in control of my own self. I think in control is always a myth, but it felt that way. And as I went deeper down that path, I started learning meditation, and I took a yoga teacher training course, and there was a teacher that I had who was teaching all about energy and chakras. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go with that. And I had been learning it here and there, for about 10 years before that. And it just really opened. And suddenly I was aware I could sense energies around me and I would be alone, but I knew people were there. I could see shadows of, outlines of figures, just all these wild things. And as I look back in hindsight, I recognized I knew things anyway. Like I would know people's names before, they told me, or I would know something about someone. I would know exactly how they felt or something that happened. And I started to piece it all together. And so I didn't know how to fully make sense of what was happening. And this was, back in 2009. And so I called around to try to find places, people who could help me understand what I was seeing, the dreams I was having, the people who would come into my house that weren't quite alive. And no one knew of anybody, knew of anything. And so it just pushed me to really drop my whole life. So I literally sold everything. I sold my house. I sold my car. I had a dog at the time that I actually rehomed. I got rid of everything I owned. I packed a backpack, and I bought a one-way ticket to India.
Wow. That's so cool.
It was insane is what it was. But I remember my dentist at the time asking me, he said, "Aren't you really scared to go?" And I said, "No, I'm more afraid to stay here in the midst of what I know isn't working. That feels more terrifying." And so I traveled the world for about a year and a half, and I went all over Southeast Asia, Australia. And I just really paid attention to what I was pulled to. So if I wanted to learn how to do massage or Reiki or crystal healing or past life regression, I just allowed myself to learn. And my gifts started opening up like crazy. And when I landed in Bali, I was trained by this medium who just said, "You're supposed to be studying with me. You should come study with me."
Wow.
And that really blew open my gifts.
That's amazing. That is so cool. I want to do that.
It was like such a crazy, life experience. But then it's that flip side where I got through the year and a half so different than how I had started out. but you know, when you're in the midst of a big journey, you don't recognize where you are, so you just really feel lost. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember coming back to the States. This must have been 2011. And I came back to the States, and I felt different, but I felt so outside of who I was that I didn't fit anymore with the people I had known.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
you
can
know,
really relate. Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you kind of feel lost and confused until it all starts coming together. And
Mm.
luckily, a friend asked me to show him what I'd learned. And so at the time, I was reading cards. So I read his cards, and he was so blown away. He sent me another friend, and she sent me someone, and she sent me someone. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So the business part of me really found me. I didn't go find it.
Mm.
Yeah. So then I've been doing this professionally now since 2011.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is really cool. And I know that one of the things that you do is help other people realize their gift, which
Yeah.
is kind of like your own journey. You had it all along, but you didn't realize it or acknowledge it or recognize it
Right.
really. So that is
Yeah.
really
That's
an
it.
amazing thing.
Yeah, and it's so fun to look at someone, or to really, I do a lot of phone work. So I'm hearing someone. I'm super clairaudient, but I can hear someone and just feel them and know what gifts they have, and how they're meant to be utilizing it and how to open
Mm,
it. And I just love that because I really have found we're all gifted. We all have sixth sense, right? We just don't always know what it is or how to use it. But we
that's
all
right.
have
Yes, yes, yes. It's funny because you say that, and I actually feel very strongly that if we don't find it, that is what contributes to the frustration
it.
that a lot of people are having. And I feel like that also with
Yeah.
creativity, that we are meant to be creative. We're meant to be tuned in. We're really meant to. That's our home. And when we don't do that
Yeah.
consciously or are aware of where to channel it, we actually become destructive. And so I think it's so
Yeah.
important to
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, and when we're not quite tapped in, we're disconnected from purpose because I think our intuitive gifts, they really do serve and go into our purpose as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
this alignment. It's almost like this DNA, everything
100.
comes together and you can really feel it. Everything just makes sense. You're home. Like literally
Yeah,
home within yourself.
right.
And it's so interesting. So we're talking about intuition, and I wanted to have you share what it feels like to intuit, to really
Oh,
connect, and
yeah.
what does it feel like within yourself, and how that became more apparent to you as you began discovering it.
Yeah, I think intuition is also an evolution. And
Mhm.
so as it unfolds, it changes. When I first started stepping into it, like really learning how to use it, because we all have it, we just have to learn how to control or use it. And when I first started really stepping into it, I was really big on concentration and focus. So I would literally meditate for hours before I ever saw a client. I'd be very meditated, and I would feel this kind of actually, I called it the Percocet feeling
Mm.
because I don't know if you've ever taken a Percocet. I had to for a surgery once.
Mhm.
I took 2 of them and I was like, "Done, I cannot take those," because it felt this light floating feeling, and I was like,
Mhm.
"That's a little too enjoyable," and then I found that through the meditation, and I was like, "Ooh, that's really nice," and so it was this when I would flip into that intuitive mode, it would feel like floating. And then information would just come in and feelings would come in. And I work
Mm.
heavily kinesthetically, so through body sensation as well as emotion. And so body pains would come in,
Mhm.
the sensation of how someone died or the sensation of what was going on in the person's body I was working with, and how to
Mhm.
help heal. And so those kind of things would just sort of land and it would almost feel like it belonged inside of me. And
Mhm.
so I had to learn to be very self-aware to know what wasn't mine so that I could be
Mm.
really clear as to what was coming in and what was actually mine that was there.
Right.
And then over time it sort of shifted where I went about it really consciously too, because I thought, okay, if we're intuitive and it feels so good to be in that intuitive space, right? Then of course we could live like that. And so I started making it a real goal to live intuitively. So I wanted to flip into the ability to just know that everything was always there at my fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who helped me with the mediumship was actually a great teacher, because what he said was I would always, close my eyes and get really focused. And he would say, no, 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 don't close your eyes. And I was like, but it helps. And he's like, no, the information's always there. You just have to grab it. And so it was
Mm.
learning how to be really intuitive really quickly, because the information's always there. We're just sort of grabbing, we're grabbing it and
Yes,
pulling it
I
in.
really know what you're saying. Like I really, really, really know. I'm a meditator. I've been
Ah,
meditating for over 20 years.
yeah.
And recently, and every so often, I call it insight thought. Well, no, it's inspired thought,
Oh, I love that.
where it's like a thought that just comes in your mind and it
Yes.
comes out of you don't know where, but it just comes when you're silent.
Yep.
And I guess that's kind of like how intuition works. And I had this thought this week that we're like antennas and we tune in to different things. So you have different people that tune into different things that they're interested in tuning into.
Yes, exactly.
You can tune into silence, or you can tune into thoughts, or you can tune into anger, or you can tune into peace, or you tune in.
Yeah. Tune into desire, tune into future, tune into past, tune into, yeah,
Yes.
it's like a radio dial, we're just sort of dialing the different frequencies. And I think some of us are gifted with the ability to dial a lot of different frequencies. And then some
Mhm.
of us are more limited. And I think the more we work at it, the more we can develop that as well. The frequencies sort of ability to shift.
Yes, which
Yeah.
is something of a mediumship, like when you're able to
Yeah.
tune into both worlds
Yes.
at the same
Exactly.
time and
Yeah. And
communicate
then
those. Yeah,
yeah, and even within mediumship, there are, mediums who have, frequencies. They can pick up frequencies really easily, like, oh, it's easier to tune into grandparents or father figures, or it's easier to tune into the deceased children, or, there are different kind of frequencies. And then really gifted mediums, or mediums who are very consistent with a wide range of people,
mhm.
have a larger radio dial, right? They're just
Oh, it's
able
so
to
interesting.
connect into these different frequencies.
I'm like thinking like it's like a mediumship niche, because people can have like different niches or things that they're just more connected to, or they can have more of a range or general like that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, there are some
Interesting.
people that are known, like, just they're always connecting to fathers. I'm like, there are a handful of mediums, I'm like, they're always gonna get the father energy. And then there are some who are always gonna get deceased animal energy, like pets.
Mhm.
And it really just depends. So within mediumship, you can have a specific frequency.
That's cool. And so what do you feel? Do you feel like more general or is there one
I'm
specific?
very general. Yeah, the guy
Mhm.
who trained me actually said, he was like, I've never seen anyone with the bandwidth that you have, your
Mm.
ability to tune into the different kinds of frequencies. So I think that really is, I'm just blessed in that way. It's just the ability to connect out into a broad range of categories.
That's so cool. I love that. And what I was thinking too is that you must have had, I've heard a lot from people who are intuitive, very intuitive, that earlier on, before they know that they're intuitive and before they know they have the gift, they experience a lot of anxiety because they pick up on so many things and they don't know how to label them or what to make of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know what, when I look back, of course I didn't know this growing up, I shifted my anxiety into productivity.
Hmm.
And so I was extremely productive, extremely involved in everything, just overachiever, out the wazoo kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I realize now it wasn't because I was ambitious and motivated. I mean, that was what was said at the time, but it was because I was really anxious, trying to just, stay busy and stay preoccupied, and stay just honed in on what I could make sense of.
Hmm.
And if I were to go back into my childhood, like the bits before I could remember, I know that there are times when I saw things I couldn't understand or felt frightened. There's one specific house, because we moved every year growing up. And so there was one specific house we lived in, and I just remember always being afraid. And I'm sure, I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I'm sure it was just seeing and feeling all of the things moving around that didn't make sense, because my parents weren't validating it, or no one else, my siblings weren't seeing it. So I
Right.
think it's really confusing, and we learn to shut it down.
Yeah, because it's not something that is talked about
Right,
or really seen as normal at the
right,
time.
right.
Now the world's coming
We're more
to
open.
It's a little
Yeah,
different.
and I think we're also people who are having, children are typically right now, if they're in the space of mindfulness, they are having children who are more open because
Hmm.
they're able to facilitate that. And
Right.
so like in our generation, we had to really learn to, to peel off the layers and peel off the boundaries and open up. And the new generation coming in, it's we have to help them learn how to put boundaries on and keep themselves safe because they are
Hmm.
so open.
It's yin and yang. It's so true. And it tends to be this like back and forth until it finally stabilizes.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like with everything, it's when we look at the fear of what's in it and we can deconstruct that and recognize that we're all really, everything stems out of pure source energy, and that's where
Mhm.
everything goes to. I think when we recognize that, there's this feeling of complete safety. And so we're more able and willing to open our gifts.
Yeah, it's true. The safety, it's like having a safe space and feeling like you can actually allow yourself to be open to it.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I remember reading something on your website and I thought it was really cool. You said you can't desire anything you don't already know exists. I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just
It's
such a powerful statement that it was like, yeah, it's the truth.
right?
Yes.
Because it shows us the vastness of who we are as souls and what we experienced, what we've
Hmm.
known, what we know in our being.
Hmm.
I wouldn't know to sit here and desire a chocolate bar if I'd never ever had one. I just
Right.
wouldn't know to. I
Right,
remember,
right.
yeah, I remember being in fifth grade and I had my friend at the time, her name was Anna. And she didn't really like sweets. She like didn't eat them. And that was all I wanted. And I realized she was like, well, we don't eat them. Like, we just don't have them. And I was like, oh my God, it's how my parents reward us or distract us.
Mhm.
And it was this really, I just remember at the time knowing there was something powerful about it. And then later, being able to piece together like, oh, because we can't desire what we don't want. We can't desire to
Mm,
write a novel if we don't know that that exists within us. We can't desire to have
that's true.
children,
Oh,
right? If
that's
we
so
don't,
beautiful. Yes.
right. We can't desire to have children if we don't know somewhere that ability to parent sits
Yes.
within us. We know
That's
it in
right.
our being, be it in another life or in this life, but we know it within us. We know it's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
We can't
100%.
desire partnership, right?
Mhm.
Or family dynamics to feel a certain way if we haven't somewhere along that line had that experience.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes so much sense. So here's the thing. So a lot of listeners are obviously desiring very badly to
Children.
conceive right now.
Yeah.
And you try to make sense of it. And obviously it's so different for every person, but you think to yourself, like, why is it that they're going through this uphill battle if they're
Yeah.
desiring it and connecting with it? It's a question that comes to mind.
Yeah. Well, and okay, here's where I'll get maybe a little controversial, but we really come and open into this idea of if you really desire it, you can make it happen.
Hmm.
It comes about because I think people refer to it as the secret law of attraction, right? Or the law of attraction. If
Hmm.
you really desire it and you align with it, then it will happen. It will open for you.
Hmm.
And, and it's it just doesn't work like that. Like, I just want to call BS on it.
Hmm.
Because what happens is you then start to go, okay, well, then what's wrong with me?
Right.
I'm not doing it right. I don't desire it enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving enough. God doesn't like me. Source doesn't approve of me. It's that I'm being punished, right? Which is where we
Hmm.
get into all these false beliefs about what source is. And
Hmm.
so instead, we have to recognize that what really comes to creation takes two things. It takes ourselves and that true desire and the recognition of the desire in the heart, but it also has to really join together with source, and it
Hmm.
has to be co-created. Nothing is solely created human wise. It has
Yes.
to be co-created, and when we try to go straight law of attraction, we are cutting out source. and
Hmm.
and there are different reasons. I think this human framework that we're in is limited. I do think it's limited, and I think
Hmm.
that we do unfortunately still learn by hardship And we learn to
True.
learn the value of time. Sometimes fertility is about time,
Mm-hmm.
right? We learn the value of time because if we were to create right away and we had that ability as humans, we would create things that we don't like because we're still run with a bunch of fear thoughts. Oh, what if I'm walking to the parking lot and I get mugged? What if someone breaks into my house? If we didn't have time, that gift, we would be instantly, all these things would be happening, right? So because we're still in the human realm, we have these fears, we're gifted with time, and then we step out of trust. And I do think there's something to be said for fear, because I do think that fear can get in the way. I have seen in women that I've worked with for some fertility issues, I have seen where they really had these deep fears, and they might have been ancestral, like in their family of origin, but they were sitting there around their fears of parenting, their fears of mothering, their fears
Mm-hmm.
of what it would do to their
I've seen
body.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it is about the fear. Sometimes it is about the physical. It really is about the physical space in the body that's not meant to be the journey. The journey is meant to be through other means. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's about moving the energy and shifting the energy to support the soul that wants to come in,
Right.
right? It really does depend. I think everybody's different. There's no
Mm-hmm.
one-stop shopping when it comes to fertility.
Yeah.
Um, so I think when you're looking at, when you take it outside of just the physical body, right? Because there are tests we can do, we can figure out the physicality of it. And then we move it into the holistic realm of energy, of acupuncture, of the things that help
Mm-hmm.
get that energy aligned. But then we also have to take it down to the emotional level, and the ancestral energetics that clear out what's being blocked. I think those things are important factors to consider.
Absolutely. I think that it kind of wakes you up to questions about what's happening, because I do think that ultimately you have this desire, and this desire is real. Just like you said, it's almost born within you.
Yeah, biological.
And it also, it's almost like a wake up call to see what's happening. Why is my body going through? Why is this happening in my life right now?
Yeah.
That question, and not in a way of blame, like you said, because that's
Right.
a limiting belief. It's not based in truth.
Right. Well, and I look at, I think there are all sorts of health issues that come up that really require this compassion and patience.
Hmm.
And you don't know it. Like if you haven't been in this space of, not being able to conceive, you don't know what that's like. If
Hmm.
if you've been in that space, then you have more compassion. If you've not been in the space of having a chronic illness, you don't know what that's like. If
Hmm.
you've not been in the space of having your heart broken, if you've not been in the space of loss of a loved one, right? We can't really go into full compassion. And then the more experiences we have that have us grow our human spirit, like our deep sense of, human spirit, the more compassion we have for humanity in general.
True.
The past couple years, I've had this sort of chronic illness that keeps on, and been working with doctors and practitioners to figure it out, and intuition to figure it out, and all these things. And because it keeps going down this, like, oh, I think I've got it, and then there's one more piece. And, oh, I think I've got it, and then there's one more
Mhm.
setback. It has opened this huge, vast understanding of compassion that I didn't have before. And so I'm frustrated as it's happening, right? As we get, like, it's frustrating, it's saddening, it's grief filled, it's, anger making, right? It's all of
Hmm.
those rich human experiences that we have to allow. But then we come out of it with this deeper understanding for the purpose of it and how we then turn around and serve humanity with that purpose.
Yes.
And I always look at that serving as, it could just be one person. It could just be understanding one person's issues with infertility, or understanding one person's loss, or understanding one person's chronic illness. And that makes all the difference to them to feel that. And so then that quantifies, the hardship that we went through, whenever we can turn around and serve with that kind of compassion. So while I don't think we can, spiritual bypass and sidestep our feelings and go, oh, but it's fine because I know I'll be able to help someone someday. I
Hmm.
do think we have to go into the feeling of it in the minute and deal with all of that, because that makes everything richer.
Yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
look at today, I look at what's happening right now around the world. And
Oh,
within everything that happens, I find that there's good in everything. If you really
yes.
look, you'll see, even with the worst things that can happen in life, it brings a unity with humanity that doesn't always happen when everything's dandy and easy and, you know,
Absolutely.
la-di-da.
Yeah, well, with the pandemic that's sweeping, it's been interesting because I typically keep to myself. I do my work. I see my neighbors. I
Hmm.
like to kind of be insular, but I find myself moved to reach out. Like, how am I serving the community? How am I giving back? How am I checking in on people that I haven't checked in on before? So
Hmm.
even in the midst of, pull in and socially isolate yourself, right?
Hmm.
We're really feeling that connection and that reaching out. And tragedy,
Yeah.
if you look back historically,
Hmm.
tragedy does that.
It
It pulls
does.
us. And I think humanity still works like that. And I think if that's the huge, macro level, and if we boil that down to the micro level and the human experience of, fertility in this case,
Hmm.
we're looking at the micro level of that macro compassion. So something that's devastating is also serving humanity. Something that is isolating is also connecting, because we're finding all those ways in which we're connected. Yesterday, I was so moved because in my inbox, I had, emails from the local gym and the YMCA and a couple of yoga organizations and a meditation group that were like, here, we're giving this for free. We're giving this for free.
Hmm.
A free live, broadcast of meditation. It was just like, how can we all give and serve and connect?
Yeah.
And that's the resilience of humanity. Like, I think that's
Oh,
why we're
yes.
I think
It
that's
is
why humans are
amazing.
really cool.
Yes, we really are. We really are. I don't think we realize just how cool we are. It's kind of like dormant, just like
Right,
you felt with your
right,
intuition. You didn't even know it existed. And
right,
it
right.
takes sometimes these things to bring it out. And I walk around the neighborhood, walking my dog, going through, walking with my kids. I see families biking, uh, people spending time
Yeah,
talking, walking. Like there's this peace that's taking over where there's a little pressure that's been
yeah,
released. Of course it's scary, and you're concerned about your loved ones, especially
yeah.
the
It's
elderly, and at the same time there's this pressure has been like released. That's what I feel, at least. It's kind of an interesting experience.
yeah. It's fascinating. I was just writing about it before we hopped on here. I was doing some writing and I was writing about how I always think the most confusing part of being human is the fact that we hold such conflicting emotions within us.
Hmm.
And I'm like, wow,
So
especially as an
true.
intuitive right now, you look outside and you can feel like the pressure and the fear and right and
Hmm.
all of that pent up stuff, and then you can also feel this like, but we get to slow
Yeah.
down, and
Yes.
you can feel the relaxation as well as the fear for people who aren't making money right now, because that's a very
Yes.
real thing. So it's these dual-sided things that are happening, and that's
It's
where,
true.
again, as humans, we're having to bridge together, like, okay, the people who are serving in restaurants and the people who are musicians with in-person gigs and the people who are dog walkers and who are traveling or house sitters or those people who are losing their income, right?
Yeah.
It's how do we step up and serve them?
Yes.
How do we hold up our community as well as take the time, if have it,
Mhm.
and still hold our finances in place. And it's just this massive
It is.
restructuring of our priorities.
It is. And it's this uncertainty, which is definitely, I mean, even with my business, it's an uncertainty. I mean, I had to close down, and tomorrow I'm coming in with a mask, and there's
Right.
people that still want treatments, and they want that support. And I feel obligated
Right.
to continue supporting them. I'll do it safely, whatever, until they
Yeah.
tell me you have to shut this down.
Right.
But there is
Right.
that
Right.
interesting, it's just an interesting thing, because there is this uncertainty, but yet at the same time, there's a feeling of peace, and it is that duality.
Yeah, and I think we're also having to think of others first,
Hmm.
like usually if we have a cold or flu, it's like, oh, whatever, we'll go, we'll get out, we'll get about out and about.
Yeah.
And now it's like, wait, I don't want to impact someone else. This morning I had an appointment scheduled to go in and see someone who was going to service me. And I woke up and I had like this little pressure in my lungs and a little bit of a cough. And
Mhm.
I just thought, that's not fair. I can't do that to him. He was an older
Yes.
man. And I was like, that's not fair. I can't
Yeah.
do it. And so I was like, hey, I have to cancel. Happy to pay, but I don't want to put you at risk and I don't want to put myself at risk. And so this is the best decision. So we're having to reorganize to think about others in a
Hmm.
way that we haven't had to before, which I think is really healthy.
It is. It really
Mhm.
is, and it's true. You have to do right by each other. At this point, I feel like people are really coming together. That's
Yeah.
the unity that I feel. It's kind of cool. That part of it's really cool. I mean, obviously it's
Yeah.
not cool that there's this pandemic going on. You
No,
know?
there's some horrible things attached, right? Like I'm nervous for my parents and, all
Yeah.
those, sad for my friends who have lost their incomes totally and
Yes.
all of that. But it is that it's side by side with like, but okay, we get to slow down and okay, we get to regroup and okay, we get to reprioritize and we get to value human life and we get to
Hmm.
reevaluate, how we walk on this earth. It's
Yeah.
just really, yeah, it's an interesting time.
It's a very interesting time. And I think to myself, I guess what it came down to is there's nothing we could do about this. So how can we learn from this? How can we grow from this? And I guess same can be applied to fertility.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, and what I'm thinking about right now, the connection I'm making in my head is, when all this first started, one of my big messages, I was scrolling through Instagram one day and everywhere I landed, I was hearing or reading the same thing, which was like, don't buy into the fear, don't panic, stop being fearful, stop the hoarding, stop the panicking, stop the, all of that. And I got so bothered by it. And I had to
Hmm.
sit and then I was like, oh, I'm bothered because we're people and we're going to feel, we're going to react. And it was like, let's stop judging. Let's stop
Hmm.
being condemning.
Yeah.
Let's instead of being contempt, holding it in contempt, let's hold it in compassion.
Right.
And that's the place of honoring that second chakra, right? The second chakra,
Yeah.
that if your listeners, right, if you're familiar with chakras, it sits in the sort of, I call it the water center. It's the emotional place, but it's the reproductive organs as well, but the water organs too. And it's that real place of creativity, right? Of a woman's fertility, but it's
Hmm.
also that place of pure emotions. And so if we have emotions that are stifled and stuck there, right? If we're being told not to feel something, like with this pandemic, we're being
Hmm.
told not to feel something, then we're shutting that down and that's crimping that second chakra area and
Hmm.
stifling everything. So
Right.
women are often told, don't be so sensitive, you're oversensitive, don't feel so much, stuff your feelings, right?
Mm.
We're not given a lot of time in our generation, at least, to really feel our feelings and talk about our feelings and process our feelings. I know for me it was like, just keep going, like shut up and keep going. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
care what you feel, get things
Right.
done, right? Which I think was common. So I think
Yes.
that women, yeah, men for sure specifically are taught not to feel, which is unfortunate, but women start to stuff it because they don't want to feel too high maintenance or
Hmm.
too oversensitive or whatever it is. And then these emotions get bogged down. And when that second chakra gets stuck like that with all these emotions and the feelings and the shut down or crimping off of creativity, that's going to impact fertility because it's going to impact creation, right?
Hmm.
So in that second chakra, when we can honor all the feelings that are in there, all of them, the shadow side of everything, the light side of everything, right? The positive, the negative, the light, the dark, all of it, that's when we can start to really clear that space out. We can
Hmm.
honor the fear, we can honor the terror, we can honor the sadness, we can honor the bliss, the ecstasy, the desire. We honor all of it. That starts to become a much cleaner place to be able to create. There's a
Yes.
reason when women are about to have a baby, yeah, they nest, they
Hmm.
clean, right? They clean. Well, we have to do that same thing with our second chakra. We
Hmm.
have to clean it. We have to clean out the emotions to really
Yes.
allow ourselves to dive in there. So journaling, getting it out, therapy, acupuncture, energy healing, all that stuff's going to be really good because it's like your second chakra needs, it needs a good wash to be
It
able to really
does.
create and
Yeah,
hold life.
well, it's interesting because I'm actually an artist.
Oh, so
I
cool.
was born an artist, and in my space, I need to have I consider myself a channel more than an artist. So I feel like I channel the creation.
Mm,
And if my mind or my ego steps in the way, it doesn't come out clearly. And, the
right.
book, The Artist's Way, she talks about writing the morning pages to
Love it.
clear out that so that you're able to channel more of that art and be
Yeah.
able to create. Now, what's interesting too is it's right next to the first chakra, it's the root chakra, which is based in safety.
Yes.
And creativity it literally sits on safety. If a child
Yes. I
feels like
love
he's going
that.
to be
Yes.
judged which happens a lot. And I think it immediately closes the second chakra. When a child is younger, they
Yeah,
always create. They dance, they draw, they color, they sing. They're always in creation. You never find a child saying, "Well,
yeah,
I'm not born creative." They create. It's their nature. As soon as they
right,
get a teacher that says,
right.
"You're not doing this correctly," they immediately stop feeling safe and they shut it down.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think as women, we have to look at like how that's happened to us. What have we shut down? And
Mhm.
I listening to you, it's such a beautiful way to explain it. I love how you said it. But I was also thinking about, in creativity, the need for negative space, for blank, clean space, for pure
Mhm.
potential. When you think about the womb, it is an empty space. It is pure potential always.
Yeah.
I love the illustration of a circle because I'm like, it's so beautiful. It's like this whole complete thing, and yet there's all this space inside for potential. But
Mhm.
anyone who is creative, and in every area of creativity, there's always going to be negative space. If you're a chef, you're going to have a clean countertop. If you're an artist, you're going to have a blank palette. If you're a
Mhm.
clay maker, you're going to have pure mud. If you're right, if you're working with numbers and you're an accountant and you're
Mhm.
creative, you're going to start from zero, right? You're always working with negative space, always.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's also that feeling of just it's okay to have a negative space and open up and be able to fill it, because I think it's like that doubt of being able to express yourself regardless, or
Yep.
feel that whatever you feel is valid. It's such an interesting,
Yeah.
there's so many intricacies in it.
I know. Well, it's interesting because with the chakra system, we can break it all down, right? But
Hmm.
then really we have to remember it does operate in fluidity. It does operate as a holistic system. And
Hmm.
so you can't take away creativity from the stability and the safety and
Hmm.
security.
Yeah.
You can't take away power from creativity. You
Hmm.
can't take away the heart and love from power and from
Hmm.
creativity and from stability. Like they all
Yeah.
interconnect. They can't really stand alone, even though we like to try to make them stand alone. So even with fertility issues, I would say, well, we can, we're drawn to the second chakra because that's where it sort of happens.
Hmm.
That's not the only place. We have to look at the whole system, as a
That's right.
whole. How are we open to source as well as speaking our truth and holding our heart? And are we in our power? And are we safe? And are we
Hmm.
creative? All of it.
Absolutely. So where does a person start if they literally feel blocked?
Yeah.
How, where would they start?
Yeah, I would say I love this question because there's so many good answers, right? But but I would say it depends on how they intake information and how they learn. I would say if you're an audio learner, podcast or books on Audible would be a really helpful place. Guided meditations would be a really helpful place.
Mhm.
Also, writing and journaling for those people who are auditory or are visual, because that's getting it out there where you can see it.
Mhm.
Journaling. There's therapy when you feel blocked that you can talk through and work through. There is learning about the chakra system. Sometimes just learning something that's a spiritual opening,
Mhm.
can shift your belief system enough for it to open. I'm huge on books like The Teacher in Me Never Dies.
Mm.
So when I channel for people, I also channel in book titles all the time, like what they should read to help them, which is kind of fun.
Mhm.
Um, so like I would say, gathering the information, going to what's the music that's going to help me move my energy, what's movement, physical movement in my body, what is the movement that's going to help me get out and write or talk or call a friend or see a therapist or do some energy work or do some acupuncture or do some massage, or right. I think there are all these different modalities, and we have to be enough connected to ourselves to feel what we're moved, but to also know how we shift, to know what
Mhm.
shifts us, right?
Yeah.
So I know for me, like if I'm really stuck on something, I know that I need movement. I
Mhm.
know that I need movement, be it yoga or be it a walk around the block or walk with the dog.
Mhm.
If I'm really, really, blocked in a place of emotions, then I know I need stillness. I know I just have to be still and to either journal or just sit until I'm willing to feel it. Just right.
Yes.
So I think it can be different for everyone. We just have to know kind of how we're moved. And if you're really blocked on emotions, you can't access it. I would say watch a show, or, watch something that can get that feeling out, because that can get you connected enough so that you can get it out of your system.
Yeah, you just got me thinking that a lot of times when we do get into these emotions, what happens is that we tend to want to fix it from that same level, from the emotional
Yeah.
level. And what you said
Yeah.
just, really rung true. Like, as when you're feeling that, take a walk or do something physical or do something or watch something else. Like, it's actually so good to switch to a different method
Yeah.
so that it
Yeah.
breaks up that stagnation.
Absolutely. I had this point, it's probably like a year and a half ago, when I was working on like a booklet, like writing a booklet, and I could feel what I was supposed to be writing, right? It was like a booklet on breakups. I could feel it, I could feel it, I could feel it. And then I hit this point and I just got kind of stuck. Like, I was really stumped. And so on that mental level that I was working from, I couldn't get the next like topic, or, I just couldn't do it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go for a walk. And so I walked out in the woods and I was walking, walking, walking. And I just hit this place, and it all just came in. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like, now I can
Mhm.
go back and write the rest of it,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because it was enough to open that channel.
And it
Mhm.
takes surrender to be able to know to do that. Because most of the time we'll get stuck and we'll
Yes.
want to stay in that same place to just, oh, we need to figure this out. But it takes the surrender to
Yeah.
just let that go and walk and switch over to a different part of our brain.
Yeah. I have a dear friend who's a very talented writer, and she's written like 20 something books, and she's really productive. And I was like, how do you do that? Because I'll sit and I'll get stumped and I'll sit. And so I'll be sitting for like 6 hours and I'll have, one page. And I'm like, this is not productive.
Mhm.
And she sits for 30 minutes and has like 10 pages. I'm like, okay, what's the secret? And she said that she will make a list of her kind of to dos. And then as soon as she hits like a stumped place, she gets up and does something else on her list. And then she goes
Yeah.
back, and then she gets up, and then she goes back. And I'm like, wow, it's really productive to do that, because we're not allowing ourselves to stagnate. And then we bump down into frustration. We
Right.
just move on to the next thing,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
helpful. Hmm.
Totally. And so I know that because I'm speaking to so many people going through the fertility journey, is that one of the things that they do is they'll start looking in, online group chats, and getting really, really like obsessed with the information that they're getting. It's almost like a spiral of Google. And sometimes it ends up getting them more confused, and then they want to Google more, and they get stuck in that, and it brings more stress into their bodies. And so
Yes.
finding a way, even though it doesn't feel natural, because you really want to finish that open loop, as they say, in your mind, you want that answer. When there's an open loop, you want a conclusion. And so a lot
Right.
of times it'll get us spinning our wheels, spinning, spinning, spinning. But like you said, that is just such a great thing to just, even though it doesn't feel like you want to do this, just switch over into
Right.
a
You just
different
leave it.
activity. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it interrupts. I mean, they even say if you have a child who is OCD, right? And I don't know if you've ever dealt with an OCD child, but they will have these meltdowns. Like, if you tell them, oh, there's chicken for dinner and they wanted fish, it's like a 90-minute meltdown, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
really
think all
painful.
children have those moments. Yeah,
They might, they might, but when you get this, like,
yeah,
fixated OCD,
that's right.
they say like distraction, distraction. So
Yes.
during a meltdown, you want to go, oh, hey, go make your bed, and then we'll talk about this. Like, as soon as you
Mhm.
distract them, they're
Yeah.
onto something different, because there is that channel in the brain where we can flip to something else, and that does allow. See, there's this real belief I have that we're never given a problem without the solution in place. I don't
Mhm.
think God just hands us half, right? So I don't think we're ever handed the problem without the solution. We're given both. We can be over focused on the problem and not open to the solution, which may
Mhm.
make it feel like it's not there, but it's there. It's just
Right.
a matter of being open enough to the intuition and allowing yourself to be guided along, so that you can see or hear or find or feel that experience, that answer, that solution, where it is.
Yes, I really believe what you said. That's always, and I've heard like quotes like that. It's always rung true to me. There's
Mhm.
always a solution. Even when
Mhm.
it feels impossible, there's always a solution.
Always.
And, coming back to full circle, I've talked to so many and interviewed so many women that became professionals in the fertility world because they themselves went through it. And so in
Right.
hindsight, you talked about that calling, and
Yeah.
sometimes things happen to call you into a certain life path.
Yeah.
And so these people have gone through this and have been called and now are helping and serving other women and have end up with a child that they're meant to have, and they say, I wouldn't have changed one thing. I wouldn't have had this child that I have today had it not been
Right.
for my journey. But it's hard
Right.
to see when you're in it. So, in the thick of it, it takes time and space, and I really think that it just comes down to faith.
Yeah, it does. And surrender, I think faith and surrender are so intertwined, like imagination and intuition, right? They just kind
Mhm,
of are like that. They're wound together. But I think when we have faith, we're able to surrender because we're taught to be so mentally strong to figure it out and to
mhm,
fix the problem, right? So we
mhm,
orient from there instead of let me trust this deeper, bigger guidance, this bigger source. Let me trust that and lean into it and feel how I'm carried instead of feeling like I'm being punished
mhm,
along the way without the answers. It's a very different journey when you're, sitting in the raft and guiding down than you're rather than when you're sitting in the raft and dragging your feet on the bottom of the river,
mhm.
and getting
It's
muddy
painful.
later.
Yeah.
It's painful. Yeah, break your legs actually, I guess when
Yeah.
you try along there.
Not very pleasant, yeah.
No, yeah, so it's like, okay,
Yeah.
this maybe isn't how I imagined it or wanted it or thought I wanted it, but
Mhm,
this in this moment is for whatever my journey is, the
mm,
way that it is. And God knows my heart or source, the higher being, whatever that word is, great
mhm,
spirit knows my heart even better than I may at
mm,
this moment.
yeah.
So I lean into that and trust that whatever my desire is, it's already known.
That is just the epitome of empowerment right there.
Yeah, 100% because it
Yeah.
requires complete surrender, which
Mm.
requires faith.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? Surrender, it falsely feels like weakness.
Yeah.
Surrender, right?
Yeah. Because we think of waving the white flag or giving up, and we don't want
Yes.
to be seen as
Oh
that.
my God, yes.
When in actuality, it's surrender is this beautiful, empowered, movement, motion, and choice.
Yeah. It means
Mhm.
I'm strong. I can handle this. I can surrender because I know I'll be able to get through this.
Right. And surrendering, I think, is also a way of acceptance. And isn't that the antithesis of judgment that we find in the second chakra? Like we go into full acceptance of what is.
Yes. Oh my God, this is great. I love this.
Isn't it fun? I
This
love
is so
this
much
too.
fun. When I get to talking to people about this topic and also people that I connect with, it feels like the vibration in the room or the energy is just like in this high spiritual, etheric, glowing plane.
Yeah. I mean, don't you know that all the guides are like, ooh, I'm going to tell her to say this and we're going to talk about this. Look how fun. You
our,
guys come
our
watch.
antennas are going all over the
Exactly.
place. This is
It's
great.
like hundreds of beings around.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
So
Love
much
it, love it,
fun.
love it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so how can people tune into their own inner wisdom? Oh, what do you suggest?
Well, so okay, I love this question, and there's a lot of different answers for it. But I know when people will often say, "I want you to mentor me and teach me how to be intuitive," and I'm like, "Okay, but we're gonna first start with doing the emotional work." And they never like that answer, but then they're grateful because I think to really get in tune with our truth, our deepest sense of self, that intuitive, wise self that we all are, we have to peel off the layers of what we are not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of what we've been
Yes.
taught or told or what we've assumed. So to go into the deeper layers of working on the past, on the present, who we are, how we show up, what feelings we've buried, what truths we've buried. So when we start to do that deep self work, we naturally start connecting more to our intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone really wants to connect to the wise part of them, you can just go meditate and take up a meditation practice, and there's information that will come in that way, and you can do guided meditations, and you can, do a weekend workshop. You can do all of that. But I would say if you really want to live intuitively, to deeply connect and be a clear channel for yourself and for others, the fastest way to get there and the cleanest way to get there is to work on your emotional self. It's
Yeah.
self-awareness.
Energy in motion, just like move it and get it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the more we're self-aware, the more we quickly realize what isn't our own thought, what isn't our own feeling, what isn't our own experience. So the more we're able to see it as intuition, whereas before we can just be confused because we're empathic, or confused because we're picking up somebody else's physical sensations instead of our own. And so we get
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's
such
powerful.
truth.
Yeah.
And you're working on a book.
Yes, I am. It's funny because the offer with the publisher is being negotiated today in the midst of all this crazy. I know. It's so cool. So yeah, we don't know when the publication date will be, if it will be a late 2021 or a 2022 book, but it's going to be a really cool book, based on the chakra system and health and wellness tips for, depending on what kind of chakra person you are.
I love that.
Cool.
That's cool.
No, it's really,
Chakra
really
person. I love that because, there's elements. We look at elements and there's like certain elements and like organs.
Yeah.
So there's types in Ayurveda, in Chinese medicine. And I love the chakra person because it's it's kind of similar thing.
Yeah. It makes me think of like a zodiac. You're like, oh, you're a Libra, you're a Leo, or you're a Taurus, or,
right.
It's like, oh, you're first chakra, or you're a second chakra, or you're a fourth chakra.
So cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's cool. We're having a lot of fun with it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited.
So yeah, we're working on that. And hopefully it will be out. Yeah. Thanks.
And when it
Me
is
too.
out, when the day comes, go ahead and email me. I will put this in the episode notes so that people can find it. So reach out to me at that point.
Yes.
So speaking of that, how can people find you?
Yeah. Oh, people can find me easily on the website, and that is danachildsintuitive.com. And that all my, bookings, I still do sessions, I do retreats, I do immersions, like in-person immersions. Well, right now everything's sort of,
put on hold.
But but there are 3-hour immersions, there are 8-hour immersions, there are weekend classes on demand. There's all kinds of offerings, and that's all on the website, danachildsintuitive.com. And people can book right through there too.
Beautiful. This is so much fun.
Yeah, thanks. And then Instagram, Dana Child's Intuitive on Instagram. I'm doing a year of chakras. And so for each month, there's a chakra. So we're in the third month because it's March currently. So we're in the third chakra. So then last month was the second chakra. So on Instagram,
that's so
you can
cool.
go back. Yeah, so all the posts, all the stories, everything's about the chakras. And they could even go back if they wanted to do a deep dive into the second chakra. They can see the highlight reel, and it's got all kinds of information about the second chakra. And then there's the whole month's posts are about the second chakra. And that'll go on all year long.
And you also blog as well.
I do. I blog as well. And that goes out to the newsletter. And it's on the web. They get on the website too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed meeting you. This is great.
I'm so glad you had me on. This was great to talk about.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.